Welcome to History Redacted, where we uncover what they tried to erase. The textbooks are lying to you. Let's look at the evidence. Let's perform a simple diagnostic on your reality. Look around you. Look at the water in your glass. Look at the dust motes floating in the sunlight. Is everything still? Is everything calm? Your senses, the finely tuned biological instruments that have kept your ancestors alive for thousands of years, tell you that you are stationary. They tell you the ground beneath your feet is solid, fixed, and immovable. But the official narrative, the one stamped with the seal of approval by the education system, tells you that your senses are hallucinating. They claim that right now, at this very second, you are spinning around the Earth's axis at 1,674 kilometers per hour. That is 465 meters per second. Do you understand what that number means? It means you are spinning faster than the speed of sound. You are supersonic. And yet, you don't feel a breeze. You don't feel the centrifugal force trying to throw you off the surface. You don't see the water in your glass tilting. For decades, the gatekeepers of this model have used a psychological pacifier to keep you from asking questions. They call it the bus analogy. You've heard it. A teacher probably told it to you with a condescending smile. Imagine you are in a bus, they say. The bus is moving at 60 miles per hour. You jump up. Do you hit the back of the bus? No. You land in the same spot because you share the momentum of the bus. It sounds logical. It shuts down the critical thinking center of the brain. It makes you feel safe. But today, we are going to tear that bus apart. We are going to look at the physics of the atmosphere, the behavior of gases in a vacuum, and the redacted reality of what happens when you leave the ground. By the end of this investigation, you will see that the bus analogy isn't science. It is a sleight of hand designed to hide the shape of the world. Let's strip the paint off this fabrication. The bus works as an analogy only because of one specific detail. The bus is a closed system. It is a metal box. The air inside the bus is trapped. It is being physically pushed by the windshield, the roof, and the rear window. The air moves with the bus because it has nowhere else to go. Now look at the Earth. According to the heliocentric model, the Earth is a ball spinning in the infinite freezing vacuum of space. There is no windshield. There is no roof. There is no giant glass dome, officially at least, that pushes the atmosphere along. So what makes the air spin? Gravity? Friction? They tell us that the rough surface of the Earth drags the atmosphere along with it. They want you to believe that the mountains and trees act like Velcro, pulling the air at supersonic speeds, perfectly synchronized with the ground. But air is a gas. It is a fluid. It has viscosity. It slips. We know for a fact, this is measurable data, that the atmosphere gets thinner the higher you go. At an altitude of 10 kilometers, the atmospheric pressure is 4 times lower than at sea level. At 20 kilometers, it is 10 times lower. The air becomes incredibly thin, fading into the nothingness of space. If the Earth is spinning at 1,600 kilometers per hour at the equator, it has to drag the air with it. But at 20 kilometers up, there is almost no friction. The air is barely there. It is touching the vacuum. There is nothing to hold it in place against the spin. So logically, physically, and mathematically, the atmosphere should lag. The higher you go, the more the air should slip. The Earth should be spinning faster than the upper atmosphere can keep up. This would create a global, constant supersonic wind roaring in the opposite direction of the rotation. But when we send weather balloons up to the stratosphere, is there a constant 1,000 mile per hour wind tearing them apart? No, the air is calm. The lag doesn't exist. And this leads us to the million-dollar question, the experiment that breaks the model. Imagine a drone, or a helicopter, or a specialized high-altitude aircraft. We take this object to the equator, where the spin is fastest. We fly it up to an altitude of 10 or 20 kilometers, and then we hover. We just sit there. According to the globe model, the ground beneath this hovering object is racing to the east at 1,674 kilometers per hour. If the air at that altitude is thin, if it is slipping even a tiny fraction against the vacuum of space, the atmosphere cannot be moving at the exact same speed as the ground. It's physically impossible for a gas to maintain perfect lockstep with a solid sphere in an open system. So the helicopter should see the Earth moving. If the helicopter hovers for just 1 hour, and the atmosphere lags behind the ground even slightly, the helicopter should drift. The ground should tear away underneath it. The pilot should see cities, mountains, and oceans racing backwards like a treadmill set to kill. But do we see this? Let's look at the case of the NASA Helios prototype. This was a solar-powered propeller-driven flying wing. It wasn't a jet. It didn't have massive thrusters. It was a fragile, lightweight atmospheric satellite. In 2001, this aircraft reached an altitude of nearly 30 kilometers. That is 96,000 feet. That is the edge of space. It loitered there. It hovered. At 30 kilometers up, the atmospheric pressure is almost non-existent. The drag from the Earth's surface is zero. If the Earth were spinning, the ground should have been rotating out from under that aircraft at supersonic speeds. The Helios would have needed to fly at 1,600 kilometers per hour just to stay above the same spot. But the Helios is a propeller plane. It cruises at roughly 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. Do you see the disconnect? If the Earth is spinning, the Helios moves backwards at Mach 1.5. If the Earth is stationary, the Helios flies normally. The data shows the aircraft maintained its position with minimal effort. It didn't fight a supersonic crosswind. It didn't have to chase the planet. It behaved exactly as if it were floating over a flat, motionless plane. The globe defenders will scream conservation of momentum again. They will say, the aircraft launched from the ground so it keeps the ground speed. Think about how insane that sounds. They are suggesting that a lightweight drone, floating in a near vacuum, maintains a lateral momentum of 1,600 kilometers per hour for hours without an engine pushing it that way, simply because it touched the ground earlier that morning? Momentum decays. Friction eats energy. Without a constant force pushing it, the atmosphere would slow down. The spin would be lost. The fact that we can hover a drone, a balloon, or a helicopter at any altitude for any length of time and land in the same county, let alone the same spot, proves one of two things. Either the laws of fluid dynamics and friction cease to exist when you work for NASA, or the Earth is not moving. But the rabbit hole goes deeper, much deeper. We have only talked about hovering. That's the easy part. The real horror starts when you try to move, when you try to fly from New York to Los Angeles versus Los Angeles to New York. If the Earth is spinning, one of those flights is chasing a target that is running away at supersonic speed. The other flight is flying headfirst into a target that is rushing to meet it. The math says these flights should have radically different fuel costs and flight times. The math says commercial aviation on a spinning ball is impossible. So why do the flight schedules look perfectly symmetrical? And why do pilots carry manuals that explicitly tell them to assume the Earth is flat and stationary? In the next part, we are going inside the cockpit. We are going to calculate the impossible fuel loads of the airline industry, and we will expose the Coriolis effect for what it really is, a ghost story told to explain away the errors in their model. Don't go anywhere. The investigation is just beginning.
We are now 30,000 feet above the surface. The seatbelt sign is off. The flight attendants are pouring coffee. Outside the window, the clouds look like a frozen ocean. It's peaceful. But if you look at the instruments, if you look at the physics that are supposed to keep this metal tube in the air, you realize you are sitting inside a mathematical impossibility. According to the official story, the one they grade you on in school, we are flying over a sphere that is spinning on its axis at supersonic speeds. We established in the previous dossier that at the equator, this speed is 1,674 kilometers per hour. Now, I want you to visualize the aircraft. A commercial airliner cruises at roughly 900 kilometers per hour. That is its top speed. It cannot go faster without breaking apart or burning all its fuel in minutes. So we have a plane doing 900, and we have the ground doing 1,600. Let's play a game of catch. You are leaving London, flying to New York. You are flying against the rotation of the Earth. The official model says the Earth is rotating towards you. It is rushing to meet the nose of your plane. Think about the speeds. You are moving at 900. The ground is moving at 1,600. The destination isn't just waiting for you. It is sprinting towards you faster than the speed of sound. If the atmosphere is thin at this altitude, and we know it is 4 times less dense than at sea level, it cannot possibly drag you back with the same force as the ground friction. So logic dictates that a flight west should be instantaneous. You take off, you hover, and New York slams into you. You should arrive in a fraction of the scheduled time. But you don't. It takes hours, just as long as the return trip. Why? This is where the heliocentric model commits suicide. You turn the plane around, you want to fly from New York to London. You are flying with the rotation. The Earth is spinning east at 1,674 kilometers per hour. You are chasing it, but your max speed is only 900 kilometers per hour. Do the math. 1,674 minus 900. You are slower than the rotation. The destination, London, is running away from you at over 700 kilometers per hour. You can never catch it. If the Earth were a spinning ball, an eastbound plane would be flying backwards relative to the ground. You would take off from New York, aim for Europe, and watch as the American continent pulls away from you faster than you can chase it. You would eventually land somewhere in the Pacific, out of fuel, having never seen the Atlantic coast. The globe apologists will scream, "But the atmosphere pushes you." Let's dissect that excuse. They claim the air carries the plane at the speed of the Earth's rotation. They want you to believe that at 10 kilometers up, in near vacuum conditions, the air is moving at 1,674 kilometers per hour, perfectly synchronized with the asphalt on the ground. But we know this is false. Atmospheric pressure at cruising altitude is 1/4 of what it is on the ground. It is thin, it is weak, it slips. Even if we are generous, extremely generous, and assume the upper atmosphere is being dragged along, it would be lagging significantly. Let's say the wind of rotation at that height is only 400 kilometers per hour. So you have your plane speed plus the atmosphere push. That gives you 1,300 kilometers per hour. The Earth is still spinning at 1,674. You are still too slow. The ground is still outrunning you by nearly 400 kilometers per hour. You will never reach London. Yet every day, thousands of planes make this trip. They fly east, they fly west, and the flight times are virtually identical. The fuel consumption is virtually identical. There is only one geometric shape where traveling from point A to point B takes the same energy as traveling from point B to point A, regardless of direction. That shape is a stationary plane, a flat, non-rotating surface. But the anomaly gets darker. We haven't talked about the Coriolis effect. This is the ghost force. In the textbook model, because the Earth is a sphere, the speed of rotation changes depending on where you are. The equator spins fast, the pole spins slow. So if you fly from the North Pole to the equator, flying south, you are moving from a slow zone to a fast zone. Imagine you are a pilot flying south for 1 hour. In that 1 hour, the ground beneath you at the destination has shifted east by over 1,000 kilometers because of the rotation speed difference. The ground is sliding sideways underneath your aircraft. To land on the runway, you wouldn't just fly straight. You would have to fly a massive curved arc. You would have to constantly fight the controls, crabbing the plane sideways to compensate for a target that is drifting east at supersonic speeds. I want you to listen to me very carefully. Pilots, do not do this. I have reviewed the flight manuals, I have spoken to the navigators. They calculate for wind speed, they calculate for air pressure, they calculate for aircraft weight. They never calculate for the rotation of the Earth beneath them. If the Coriolis effect were real, if the Earth were truly moving, a plane flying south would miss its airport by 1,200 kilometers if the pilot didn't compensate. That is the distance from London to Berlin. You don't miss by a city block, you miss by a country. So why aren't planes crashing? Why aren't they landing in the wrong oceans? Because the ground isn't moving. And here is the smoking gun, the document they didn't want you to read. There are unclassified documents from major aerospace agencies, NASA, the FAA, military ballistics divisions. When they write the code for flight simulators, when they design the guidance chips for long-range missiles, they have to input the physical model of the world. If you dig into the assumptions section of these technical papers, specifically the derivation of equations of motion for aircraft, you will find a phrase that repeats over and over again, like a glitch in the matrix. The Earth is assumed to be flat and non-rotating. The skeptics, the fact-checkers, will tell you this is just for simplification. They say the math of a round Earth is too complex for the computers, so they simplify it for the students. Does that sound plausible to you? We are talking about the military-industrial complex. We are talking about NASA. They claim to calculate trajectories to Saturn. They claim to model the Big Bang. But you're telling me their supercomputers can't handle the math of a spinning ball for a simple Cessna flight? You're telling me that when the military fires a missile worth $2 million, they use a flat Earth equation just because they're lazy? No. They use the flat Earth model because it is the model that works. If they plugged in the numbers for a spinning ball, the Coriolis effect, the curvature drop, the centrifugal force, the missile would miss, the plane would crash, the simulation would fail. They use the flat model because reality is flat. They use the stationary model because the Earth is stationary. It's not a simplification, it's an admission. Every time a pilot enters a cockpit, they are trusting their life to a manual written for a flat world. Every time a sniper adjusts his scope, he ignores the curvature. Every time a bridge is built, the blueprints treat the water level as perfectly flat for miles. The lie is so big it has become invisible. They have hidden the truth in plain sight, buried under complex equations that nobody bothers to check. But we checked, we ran the numbers, and the numbers say the Earth is standing still. So if the Earth is flat and stationary, what is above us? If we are not spinning, then why do the stars move across the sky? This is the final line of defense for the globe. Look at the stars, they say. They prove we are orbiting. But do they? Or are the stars just another part of the mechanism, another layer of the projection? In the final part of this investigation, we are going to look up. We are going to examine the sky, the movements of the luminaries, and the terrified silence of the astronomers who realize that the North Star never moves.
We are going to peel back the roof of the enclosure. The ground isn't moving, so what is spinning above our heads, and who turned it on?
If the ground is not moving, then we have a problem. A massive celestial problem. We have proven the atmosphere is not dragging the airplane. We have proven that a helicopter can hover in a vacuum-adjacent environment without the Earth tearing away beneath it at supersonic speeds. We have looked at the flight manuals that explicitly treat the world as a flat, stationary plane. But if we are standing still, why does the sun rise? Why do the stars march across the sky every night in a perfect arc? The globe defenders have a ready-made answer. They tell you, you are spinning. You just can't feel it. They tell you that while the Earth spins at 1,600 kilometers per hour, it is also orbiting the sun at 107,000 kilometers per hour. And it doesn't stop there. According to the source data, according to the very textbooks that mock you, the entire solar system is spiraling around the center of the galaxy at 700,000 kilometers per hour. 700,000. You are supposedly on a tilt-a-whirl, inside a roller coaster, on a runaway train. You are spiraling in 3 different directions simultaneously, corkscrewing through the infinite chaos of the expanding universe. So do this. Go outside tonight, set up a camera, point it at the North Star, Polaris. Open the shutter for a long exposure photograph. Leave it for hours. What do you see? You see perfect concentric circles. You see a clockwork mechanism. Polaris sits in the dead center, unmoving, while the other stars rotate around it with the precision of a Swiss watch. If we were hurtling through the galaxy at 700,000 kilometers per hour, the star field should be changing. The constellation should be warping. The North Star should not be a fixed anchor point for thousands of years of human navigation. It should be a streak in the rearview mirror. But it hasn't moved. The ancient mariners used it. The pyramids align with it. And tonight, it is in the exact same spot. How is that possible in a chaotic, spiraling universe? It isn't. It is only possible if the Earth is the floor and the sky is the ceiling. Let's go back to the source. The transcript mentions the vacuum of space. This is the cornerstone of the heliocentric model. They tell you the atmosphere thins out until it meets the nothingness of the void. But we know from basic physics and from the flight dynamics we discussed in part 2 that a gas will always expand to fill the available space. This is a law of nature. Nature abhors a vacuum. If you have a pressurized system next to a vacuum, the gas must explode outwards unless there is a physical barrier to contain it. You cannot have a tire pressure of 30 psi without the rubber tire. You cannot have an atmosphere without a container. Gravity is the magic wand they wave to explain why the air doesn't get sucked into space. They say gravity holds the air down. But we just proved that gravity isn't strong enough to drag the upper atmosphere along with the spin of the Earth. We saw that planes and balloons don't experience the drag of a spinning atmosphere. So if gravity is too weak to pull the air sideways, how is it strong enough to hold the air down against the infinite suction of a vacuum? It doesn't add up. The physics are broken. Unless there is a barrier. This is the conclusion that the flight manuals hint at. This is why the artillerymen don't calculate for rotation. This is why the engineers assume a flat, stationary Earth. Because we are in a contained system. The Earth is a stationary plane. The Antarctic ice is not a continent at the bottom of a ball. It is the perimeter. It is the walls of the container. And above us is the barrier that holds the air in. The barrier that carries the luminaries. The stars aren't trillions of miles away. The sun isn't a nuclear furnace 93 million miles away. If the sun were that far, its rays would hit the Earth parallel. But look at the clouds. Look at crepuscular rays, sunbeams coming through the clouds. They fan out. They form angles. You can trace them back to a source that is clearly local, clearly close, and clearly much smaller than they tell us. The logic of the redacted history is terrifying, but it is consistent. They lied about the shape to hide the size. They lied about the spin to hide the stillness. They lied about the vacuum to hide the container. Why? Because if you are on a spinning rock in an infinite godless universe, you are an accident. You are insignificant. You are dust. But if you are on a stationary plane, under a protective dome, at the center of a fixed creation, then you are important. And more importantly, you are not alone. And you are not in charge. They tell us it's easier to teach children the globe. They tell us it's easier to calculate missile strikes on a flat map. They mock us for questioning the narrative. But remember the NASA drone.
The Helios, hovering at 29 kilometers. It looked down. It saw a flat horizon. It saw a motionless Earth. It felt no spin. The evidence is not in the equations they write on the blackboard. The evidence is in the flight of the bird, the water in the cub, and the star that never moves. We have peeled back the black ink. The document is readable now. The Earth is fixed. The sky is moving. The container is real. The only question left is the one they are most afraid of. If we are in a container, who is outside looking in? This has been History Redacted. We don't rewrite the past. We just read what they tried to cross out. Stay vigilant. The truth is stationary. Everything else is